Welcome back to the next episode of Flyer Nation. I'm your host, Jake Zdanowski. Today, I am joined by Coach Dan Friend of the men's volleyball team.
Jake, thanks for having me. This is a neat opportunity to kind of speak a little bit, so I appreciate it.
Now, this is your 16th season as head coach. It's been a long time, and you had a lot of success last year. We went to the semifinals of the national tournament. It was a huge deal for the entire school. But you lost a lot of players too, Matt Yoshimoto being one of them, a lot of other guys, Julian Moses. What is your key to success this year after losing so many guys?
Well, I think with any of our teams, I mean, ultimately those guys have been working pretty hard, and those guys were part of the 15 runner-up team. They were redshirts that year, and so I think their work was accumulation of over years, and then some great teammates at the same time, and so and they put themselves in a position to have that success last year. But at the same time, we returned some key pieces. Do you know what I mean? You know, both our middles come back: Tyler and TJ, Ryan Coenen, Kyle Bouget. There's a lot of good pieces. You know, Dalen. They're all going to be out on the court for us, and we've got a great freshman class coming in. And so I think a combination of that and the training, and you know, we always set the bar high, and the guys have an expectation of where they want to compete at, and that's what we're going to go and do.
Yeah, and when you talk about setting the bar high, when you're scouting for freshmen and scouting for other guys that you want on your team, what other qualities are you looking for in your players besides their talent level for your team?
Personality. So I think we've got ourselves in a position now with where the team competes and plays, and we're always looking for talent, and there's certain things, you know, in that, you know, arm swing and athleticism and size and speed, agility, but really personality. Do you know what I mean? Like, do they fit into our culture and how we do things and what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it? And the guys come on recruiting visits and they stay with our guys, and we ask our guys' opinions, and you know, that's a big piece for us, and those are some of the things we look for that ultimately make great Lewis men's volleyball players.
And when you've brought a lot of success to this team because of that. Overall, throughout your coaching career, what do you attribute to that success for over so many years?
Well, I don't know. I think there's a lot of things. I mean, we've been fortunate enough to have a lot of great guys that have played for us. I think ultimately, you know, my support structure, my wife's great, you know, we got a 3-year-old now, and the family piece is really big, and so me and my wife get to dialogue a lot about volleyball and how we're doing things, which is really good. I think I've been able to keep myself involved outside, which continues to challenge me, you know, whether it's USA volleyball or beach stuff or any of that stuff. I'm still an advocate player a little bit in the summer. I try to play as much as I can, and so I'm always kind of churning, trying to get better, and then some of it's the outside stuff, whether it's reading books or watching other coaches and going to other gyms or trying to find ways to continue to be better at my craft. And you know, I'm not happy with where I'm at, and we're continuing to try to strive, and we want to compete and win a championship, both conference and nationally wise. And so, yeah.
And yeah, you talked about the outside stuff just besides Lewis University. You do a lot of beach volleyball and the National USA team. What are your roles in both of those aspects?
Well, USA Volleyball has been really great for me. I've had a lot of opportunities, whether it's you know, the junior team, the youth team. This summer I got to work with our national senior team in the VNL, and we were in Bulgaria and they were in Chicago. And so I think when you're in those venues, you get to see volleyball of all different styles and a high level of play. And so that's really kind of challenging you to kind of get better, do you know what I mean, in terms of that. I think the beach piece, I've been playing beach since I was 12, you know what I mean, and so, and been involved a long time in it, and over the past 5 or 6 years, I've been able to get involved with, you know, some AVP stuff and doing some coaching on the side with that, and it's just a different love that I have in terms of the game, and so I think all those things have put me in a good position. We do some clinics in the summer and that stuff, and interacting with other coaches, and so yeah, it's been really good.
And just besides playing too on the outside, you're also part of those two big organizations in volleyball, the Volleyball Coaches Association and the United States Volleyball Association. What roles do you have in those two associations?
Well, ultimately with the ABCA, I'm now the men's rep on the board, which is really cool. I got elected last year, and that's a position where ultimately I'm the voice for men's volleyball on the overall American Volleyball Coaches Association. And I've been involved with the ABCA though ever since I started coaching, so you know, for 20-some years in terms of that. So it's neat to be able to be in that role. I'm also the chair of the All-American Committee, which has been really fun in terms of just, you know, being able to look for players and honoring them at the end of the season from that standpoint. And so with USA, it's really just, I've been involved as a coach and a player, and so, and those are my involvement really in that piece, other than being involved on the coaching side with the USA organization.
Now let's go back to the Lewis stuff too. You've guided the team to 6 different MIVA championship tournaments. What do you do as a team that keeps your team so competitive every year?
Well, I mean, that's the expectation. We talk about every year is different, and each team is different, and how do we get that group of guys to understand what it takes to get there? And it's tough, you know what I mean? It's a grind, it's a long season, it's 9 months of us going after it, and those steps and a process, and each year we've got to tweak or change or make some adaptations, and so our ability to do that is really important. And so I do think there's layers of things that we have put in, and that could get into a pretty lengthy conversation, do you know what I mean? But I think ultimately, you know, from whether it's the mental side that we really try to train on, where we do some reading of books and throw things in from those books, to the expectation of how practices ran and the energy level that's supposed to be brought every day, and if it's not, then the guys know it needs to be better, to the weight room stuff and the outside stuff that comes with that. So even the community projects that we do outside of our volleyball, those are all things that are kind of woven into the program and the fabric of what we're trying to do. And our expectation is to be in the MIVA final. Our expectation is to put ourselves in a position to win a national championship every year, no matter who's on the floor, no matter what we're doing.
Yeah, you truly do set the bar high every season. Well, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Coach Dan Friend and later outside hitter Ryan Coenen, so stay with us. Welcome back to Flyer Nation. I'm your host, Jake Zdanowski. I am once again joined by Coach Dan Friend of the men's volleyball team. Now let's go into your coaching philosophy a little bit. Has it changed throughout the years? Do you keep the same formula every year?
We've got kind of 4 things that really are kind of the backbone of my philosophy, and ultimately there's always a few things that kind of get thrown in there depending on the year. But you know, there's a book that we give the guys, a strategic goal book, and it has this philosophy in there, and we show it to every recruit, and every guy has a copy of the book every year. And so, you know, one of the things is having fun and enjoying your experience. It's really important. I think ultimately our guys get better every day if they're having fun. You know, the overall experience is better in terms of that. They're going to make lifelong friends with these guys in terms of competing. So it becomes a pretty important piece for us, whether we're on the court or off the court in terms of that. And so the other part's in the mental side, and we touched base on that a little bit ago. And I think understanding not just individual mentality, but team mentality as well at the same time. And how do we train those things, whether it's the book I talked about we read, or the visualization stuff we do, or any of the things that kind of come along with it. We talk about outside the box and what are the extra things that we're going to do that separates you from maybe the guy in the gym that you're competing with, maybe the guy that's at Ohio State or the guy that's at UCLA, or how you're going to put yourself in a position to be the best that you can be. And then the last part is a sense of ownership and pride, and understanding what it means to be a part of the Lewis men's volleyball program and the things that come with that. And sometimes you got a little bigger target on your back, and you need to understand that and hold yourself at a high accountability, where it's in class, outside, you know, off the court stuff, on the court stuff, any of that things. And that's really kind of the backbone of what we do here in terms of that philosophy.
From your coaching's perspective, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Is there a weakness that you think that you can get better as a coach?
Well, yeah, I think ultimately I'm always trying to become a better listener and communicator. You know what I mean? I think that's a big thing. I think always striving to be a little better at that, be patient, not react too fast. I think sometimes as coaches you can get emotional really fast on something that's not done well. And so each year I try to get a little better, you know what I mean, in terms of that, and take a step back and make sure I'm seeing the whole picture and how it needs to develop. And at the same time, you know, really communicating with the guys well is really important, you know what I mean? And I try to continue to work on that. You know, I think that is a strength, but at the same time, I'm really striving to get better in that area from that standpoint. So,
if you could ask for one thing this upcoming season, what would it be?
Well, we get a year like this where we got 8 incoming freshmen and 7 seniors who graduated. There is so much information that you're trying to give them, but it's really tough because, I mean, they only can absorb so much, you know what I mean? And so it's like you got to kind of keep at them a little bit and remind them and then not overload them. And so there's a balance with that, because ultimately what they can take in will have a lot to do with how successful we are by the end of the year. Our freshman group's been really great in terms of that. Our upperclassmen have been really good about integrating them, and that's part of that process. And, you know, it's not just me coaching, but those guys got to coach a little bit too, and it helps that process along a little bit.
And you've had a lot of that success too, that for every season that you seem to come in and make an impact for your players. And that happened also in 2009, because that's when you really started to turn the team around. You rebuilt the team from pretty much the ground up. Under your coaching in 2009, can you explain about how it was like to change that team that year?
Well, you got to understand with that. So those were, we brought 15 freshmen back in 2005, and those guys were seniors that year, that group of guys. And I think it was about 8 or 9 guys that were seniors that year. And it was neat. A couple of those guys were back at alumni this last weekend, but those guys are the guys that rebuilt the program. Do you know what I mean? So there was some other guys in there, Jared Dayton, David Kiner, some other guys in terms of that kind of helped. And so, but ultimately that was their senior year, and they went from having the only losing season as freshmen because they were all starting as freshmen that year to that senior year, being top 10, beating UCLA, finishing second in the league. Drew Pickering was player of the year and really kind of was a stepping stone for us making that next jump. By the time we got to 2012, we won the conference championship, got into the Final Four, and really the accumulation of where the program took the steps. So it was neat. I saw Billy Sahagian and Craig Bowler this last weekend, and so I saw some of those guys, Nathan Kloss, and those guys were really were the ones that helped to jumpstart where we're at now.
If you had to choose your favorite moment as a head coach for any season, what would that be? Or do you even have a favorite year for your coach?
I don't know that I do. Do you know what I mean? So it's really tough. I mean, you could sit there like last year was really cool in terms of, beating Loyola on the home floor, winning in 3, and really I got to sit back and watch. And that doesn't happen very often. Like I'm interactively coaching. I literally wasn't coaching. I was literally watching our team perform at a high level. Do you know what I mean? And that was really neat to see those guys perform that well and win that championship and do it on their home floor against their home crowd. That was really cool. But there's lots of great moments for me. I think the thing that I enjoy most out of everything, is you see some of those alumni come back and they're married and they have kids now and they're successful in what they're doing. And so, and that's why I do what I do. And seeing some of that sometimes is as neat as some of those other things. And so, but I've learned one thing, it's really hard to get there. Do you know what I mean? And so, and you can go back, well, in 12, 14, or 15, you make the NCAA tournament 3 years in a row, and it's like, oh, you're boom, boom, boom. But then you got a 3 or 4 year hiatus, and you don't get there. And really understanding how hard it is to get there and cherishing and kind of being in those moments is really important. And I think as I get older, I'm trying to get better about that in terms of that.
Well, Coach, I'd like to thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us today. When we come back, we'll be joined by redshirt senior Ryan Coenen. Stay with us. Welcome back to Flyer Nation. I am now joined by redshirt senior Ryan Coenen of the men's volleyball team. Ryan, thanks so much for joining with us today.
I appreciate you guys having me.
Well, now you have been with this team for quite some time now. I've known you for 3 years and I've broadcasted your name for 3 years. How do you transition from being a freshman to now being a leader for this team?
Looking back at my freshman year, it was a roller coaster for sure. Learning the skill sets, learning kind of how Coach Friend runs things in the gym. And I was fortunate enough to have that redshirt year, and I learned a lot. And over the last 3 years, I kind of learned the system in the gym, and I learned kind of how personalities blend together and how I need to react to each individual player. So kind of that experience over my first 4 years has coached me into understanding how things work in the gym, and I can kind of project that onto the younger guys now. And I'm really enjoying my role as the oldest guy on the team now. So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun so far.
Yeah, it must feel like a new experience for you at this point.
Absolutely.
Now, being a student and an athlete for all these years, how do you juggle between those two? And what do you suggest for others who want to do the same thing going into college?
Well, we're student athletes for a reason. It's difficult to play volleyball if you're not taking care of your classwork and stuff, so that's always first and foremost. But yeah, take care of that stuff. Get your homework done, go to class. It's pretty simple in the big scheme of things, but all the rest of it becomes a lot easier if you're taking care of the small things, so that you can stay on the court, you can be eligible, and and you can compete at a high level in the sport that you love. So.
Now, you're also originally from Wisconsin, and you have a lot of teammates that are from out of state as well.
Yes.
What made you connected to Lewis, and what made you want to come here?
So Lewis is about an hour and 45 minutes away from home. So I'm from just south of Milwaukee, and it's been a great experience. My family has been able to come down to all my matches. I have a great support system, family, friends, my friends from high school. So it was the perfect location for me, where I was far enough away from home, but I could still have my relatives, my family, everyone come down and watch and kind of experience what I've experienced so far with me, and kind of go on this journey with me. So it's been perfect.
What was that transition like from going to a high school play to college play?
I didn't start playing club volleyball until I was a sophomore. And the level of volleyball is night and day from high school to college. And it's a lot faster pace. And high school, I was always the biggest guy, and it was real easy to kind of do what I want and when I want. And then you come to college, and it's a little bit of a rude awakening. But just as far as the coaching staff went and how they handled me my freshman year, to the older guys that I learned from that kind of passed the torch to me, I've had a great support system since I've been here, all 4 years. I have zero complaints, and they're kind of the reason that they molded me into how I'm doing today. So.
What is your pregame rituals? Do you have any, or do you just kind of prepare yourself mentally for what's to come?
Definitely there's mental preparation. It's a little different from being on the road versus at home. At home, it's a little more relaxed. I come from home, I can sleep in my own bed. I listen to a lot of loud music right before the game, try to hype myself up a little bit. We have our pregame meal here and everything. But on the road, when we're in the hotel, I usually like to sleep as much as I can. Sleep until the point that I'm not late to the match, but just relax, clear my mind. And then it's big during our away matches to get those touches in away gyms because it's a different atmosphere. We play in a pretty small gym here in the Neil Carey, so we play when we go to Ball State, when we go to Ohio State, we have these big arenas, and getting those touches and mentally preparing is a huge step in our success on the road. So.
Now, you're also a business administration and marketing major here at the school. What do your future aspirations look like? Did they involve volleyball at all?
Yes, yeah. More recently they have. Coach Friend and I have talked on and off. We mentioned it, he probably mentioned it to me my sophomore or junior year initially about potentially playing overseas or going to Europe or wherever it may be. And right away I was like, no, I don't want to do that. It was a little scary to me. But as my career has progressed and I'm starting to be kind of the player I want to be and get better in areas that I want to get better in, I see more of a potential in that future pathway. So right now I'm thinking about at least trying it for a year, going over to Europe and playing and see how that goes. Otherwise, with that business admin and marketing major, I'm thinking about going into sales. So we'll see.
Well, we're going to take a quick break on Flyer Nation. When we come back, I'll be joined by Ryan Coenen. Stay with us. Welcome back to Flyer Nation. I am once again joined by redshirt senior Ryan Coenen of the men's volleyball team. Let's go into a little bit of your background as a player too. What made you interested in volleyball at first? I know you told me before the interview that you started in high school.
Yeah. So when I was younger, I played basketball and baseball, and those were my main sports, kind of like your typical basketball, baseball, football as a young kid. And I picked up volleyball my freshman year, and like I said, I started club my sophomore year, and I just enjoyed it more than running suicides in basketball or kind of how the slow pace of baseball bored me a little bit. And I just had so much fun playing volleyball, and it's something that I could see myself doing consistently day in and day out without getting bored and maintaining focus and all that good stuff. So
your team also has a social media account that's very active. Do you know who runs that, and how has it helped really promote your team?
Yeah, so our other redshirt senior, I've lived with him now going on 5 years. Dalen Instinis runs the account, and yeah, him and Coach Friend work together, and they do a really nice job. Whether it's a birthday shout out or letting our fans know upcoming schedules, preseason tournaments, matches, and then doing a little fun stuff on the side, whether it's like the Instagram story or the Facebook story and all that stuff. So give you a little insight on our day-to-day workouts and all that fun stuff.
What outside activities off the court do you guys do to kind of bond together a lot more?
So every year that I've been here, we've done the Warren Dunes State Park, and we go up there as a team, and it's a big sand dune. It's right on Lake Michigan, and we do a little like conditioning exercise there as a team. And Coach Friend integrates some games into that where we compete for points, and the winners have to do less punishment at the end of the entire day. A couple weeks ago, we went paintballing. We were talking about doing Top Golf coming up in our season. So we do a lot of stuff like that. But as far as the team goes, we have guys. I've never been a part of a group like this where everyone gets along with everyone. And I mean that. I know it sounds kind of cliche, but there's never an issue. And when you have guys that gel together like that, it makes playing volleyball a lot easier, and everything works smoother, and the guys get along really well. So it's an amazing group of guys.
And you talk about the guys, the amazing group that you have around you. You have a lot of guys behind you that are going to transition into more leadership qualities. Which players on your team right now do you see can kind of transition into that leadership kind of role that you have right now?
Tyler and TJ are two middles. They have one more year after me, and I've been playing with those guys now on the court for 3 years, and I could definitely see both of them. Tyler's kind of a quiet guy, but he definitely leads by example, and he's molded into a shell more every year, and he's a hilarious guy off the court. And TJ's a little more vocal and plays with a lot of energy, and I can see those guys definitely carrying the torch. And then we have some younger guys as well, some freshmen that are coming in and already making an impact. We have Kevin Calling, we have Marty Jepson, and they're both on our side playing in practice drills with the old guys, and they've done a fantastic job so far. So I can only imagine what those guys will be like when they're juniors and seniors. Thinking about my journey as a player and kind of my progression, those guys are a lot of eons ahead of me as far as when I was a freshman. So I'm very excited for all the freshmen, not just Marty and Kevin, but all the freshmen's futures in this program. And but those two definitely standout guys.
And looking back on your career too, was there any advice that you could give your younger self? What would you say to that, or what would you say to anybody else who's aspiring to kind of play in that college level?
It's definitely a day-by-day process, and you have to understand that it's not going to be easy, and it's the extra work, and it's the stuff that you don't like to do and the stuff that's difficult that's going to make you that better player. And we have young guys now that they think a lot about execution in practice, or they think a lot about how they perform that day. And I try to tell them that I went through the same thing myself, and it's not an easy process. But you keep plugging away, and you come into the gym, and you have the best attitude possible and the most energy you can kind of project, and that makes it a lot easier. Because it's a grind, and it's a lot of practice, it's a lot of workouts, and it's every day. So you got to just have those continual internal conversations with yourself that, hey, I'm gonna get better, and I'm gonna make an impact one day.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun. It's still a great sport, and it's really, really great to see you keep playing at that same level every season. When we come back, we'll be joined by both Ryan Coenen and Coach Dan Friend. Stay with us. Welcome back to Flyer Nation. I am now joined by both Coach Dan Friend and Ryan Coenen of the men's volleyball team. Let's start with practices for you guys, the nitty-gritty of volleyball. How important are pre-practices before the season for you guys?
Ryan, you want to go first?
They're huge. We recently, it's always about the middle of October where we start our 2-hour practices, where we have a little more freedom to go a little bit longer and get more touches. But it's just, this year we have 8 new guys, and it's getting this group together and really starting to rep out different technique and kind of executing as a group, as a whole, and getting those young guys touches, and then having us old guys make sure that we're coaching them, and they're also giving us feedback. And it's just trying to gel as a group. That's the main part of October and November, and our preseason as a whole is just gelling, getting that gel together.
Now, do you focus on a key aspect for your players during practices? Is there anything that you like to kind of coach them for?
I think a little bit, and it's all the things Ryan said, but we're also trying to figure out this team makeup this year a little bit. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, we're training who's going to be in this secondary position, who's going to be the second opposite, who's going to be the third middle, who's going to be the second middle. Guys are jostling for positions, and we're figuring out team dynamics and kind of where guys are sitting at, and guys are trying to climb the ladder positionally wise, and so there's that stuff going on inside the piece of gelling the team, technique-wise, what our system is for all the young guys, and so there's a few layers with that in terms of where we're trying to get by the time December 27th rolls out.
Yeah, and these practices will help you really prepare for the upcoming season, because one of those big matchups you have is on January 17th, the big day versus Hawaii, the rematch versus Hawaii here at Nail Canary Arena. What is your mindset going into that kind of a big matchup, a very big Division I school like that, and to have a rematch like that here at home?
Well, for me, that's tough, Jake, because it's like I got a few matches before that one that even come on my plate. And so, the big thing with us, and we could talk about that match a little bit, is that we treat every match the same. Mm-hmm. So on an outside, you might look at it and go, hey, it's Hawaii, you guys played them in the national semifinal. Yeah, we don't look at it like that. I look at it right now as, we got Ohio State coming up in a couple weeks where we get some preseason stuff. And we get into the season, we go up to Canada on a preseason thing, which is really neat. We'll get to play some of the best Canada teams, and then we got King and BYU at home. You know what I mean? BYU's a formidable opponent. This place will be packed. Coonan has had a really good program the past few years. And so from a standpoint as a program and a coach, we really look at those individually. And then if we get to Hawaii and we talk about them, it's just a great opportunity. They bring back a great group of guys. They graduated a few guys, but they got to come to cold weather. So we're going to dish up the frozen tundra for them when they get here. And hopefully they won't know how to deal with it in terms of that. And it should be a great atmosphere and a great volleyball match.
Yeah, a great environment. And speaking of that, I was going to ask you too, and in those in-conference teams like Ohio State, Loyola, do you think those teams can give you a big challenge this year for this season?
I think every conference is a big challenge. So we talk about Ohio State and Loyola, but Ryan knows this. McHenry returns everybody. IPF or Purdue Fort Wayne returns everybody. Lindenwood. So I mean, our conference gets a grind for sure, and all those teams are pretty competitive. And so I think we just take one at a time. I think it'll be interesting to see where all the pieces fall with some teams on graduation of players and things like that. But the focus becomes on us and what we can do and how do we take care of the road, and home's really important at the same time. So you want to add anything to that, or?
Yeah, I was going to say it's easy. It's when you look at the Loyolas and you look at the Ohio States, it's easy to get hyped up for those matches. We got a lot of fans coming out. The atmosphere is a little bit different, but it's how do we handle some of the smaller matches like the McHenrys, the Lindenwoods, and that's at home even, but especially on the road. It's how do we mentally prep for those matches and get in the same mindset that we're going to try to bury every team that we play, no matter what the opponent is. So.
And what the mindset for overall this season, what are your goals for this upcoming season? We're going to start with you, Coach. What is the biggest things that you're looking forward to the most out of this season?
To win a conference championship. I mean, that's the goal. Do you know what I mean? So every year in and year out, it's like, how's the preseason set us up to put us in a position in the regular season to win the regular season conference? Because if you win regular season conference, then you're hosting the MIVA tournament, and if you're at home, you're in a great atmosphere in terms of playing. So I think we touched base on that earlier, but that doesn't change. Do you know what I mean from that standpoint? Out of conference stuff though, you're trying to boost your RPI. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And so we play a tough schedule out of conference, whether it's Hawaii or BYU or at Stanford. Stanford's going to have a great group this year, or any of that stuff, just to kind of put ourselves in that position to have that RPI. So.
Well, Ryan, what is the goals for you this upcoming season? What are you trying to do on the court to try to keep up your team morale throughout the season?
I'm just trying to bring as much energy as I can to practice, and everything starts in practice. So just being kind of that example to the younger guys, that example to even some of the older guys. And once that starts happening day in and day out in practice, that translates over to the matches, and yeah. So we got to start small, and then work big come some of those big conference matches, the Hawaiis, the BYUs. So.
Now, Coach, earlier you talked about the team dynamic. This year, do you think that team dynamic will kind of change compared to the other years, or do you want it to stay kind of the same?
It changes. There's no way. You have some different personnel. Do you know what I mean? We don't have Jake Wilinga. We don't have Mitch Perinar. Do you know what I mean? And so it's just, we have, Marty Jepson or Kevin Coen, Ryan Van Loo. Do you know what I mean? Joe Kes. I mean, there's just different guys making different impacts this year. You have some of the returning guys, do you know what I mean, in terms of that, but even those guys grow into a different mold a little bit, do you know what I mean? And so we talk about Ryan continuing to elevate his game, or Tyler Mitchum continuing to elevate his game, TJ taking on a leadership role. So no matter what, you won't keep that same dynamic. It starts to change and shift a little bit in the direction we want it to, but ultimately it does.
When you talk about those freshman guys and those new guys coming in too, what are your team building exercises to kind of make them a little bit more involved with the team, or kind of just bond with them a little bit? Do you have any special programs that you guys do for the freshmen coming into this program?
Well, there's a couple things from the coaching staff, and there's some things from the player side, so I'll let Ryan touch base on the player side. But for us, we've got what we call big brothers. So there's always a big brother for a young player coming in terms of that, so they can kind of navigate all the little ins and outs, classes, what does coach mean when he does this, things like that. Our assistant coaches also have freshman meetings once a week where they just meet with a freshman and let's go through a mirage of things. Hey, do you know how to work our video system? Do you know how to do this with class? Do you know how to do laundry or clean your room? Do you know what I mean? Things that you may not even think of in terms of that. And so, but we have some of those things in place to help kind of integrate them into the expectation level of what kind of goes on.
Yeah, Ryan, what's the player side look like for that?
So, I mean, we spend a lot of time together, obviously. So it kind of happens on a natural level where we're grabbing food together, we're hanging out in the dorms before practice, after practice. And then personally, myself, Kyle Bouget, and Dalen are fortunate enough to have an off-campus house, and that's kind of like the hub of where the team will hang out. And we have a lot of come over for football games. We have the Super Bowl every year. We do a bunch of fun stuff like that. So the guys will come over. They know they have a place to get away from class, or they have a place to get away from volleyball. But yeah, it's just the time. You would think that we wouldn't spend as much time off the court as we do with how much time we spend on the court, if that makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, it's days get long, but we enjoy each other's company every minute of it. So.
also ask you this. Throughout the years you've played, what is the favorite aspect that you love about this team?
I think I kind of touched on it earlier. It's just how effortless everything is and how we take care of the small things so that everything else becomes easier for us, how well the guys get along. And humor is a big part of things, whether we're watching film and someone messes up or trips and falls, gets hit in the head with a ball, the whole team kind of goes at each other a little bit and the coaches get involved, and that happens in practice too. We keep things light. We play music. We play loud music during practice. We talk a little smack here and there. So it's just that competitive atmosphere while keeping it friendly, and we walk around with our arms around each other out the gym every day, like nothing happens. But it's for sure a battle, and we have a lot of fun.
Coach, do you have any other favorite aspects of this team that you like?
I don't know so much of this team yet. Ask me when we get to April and May. But I think in general, I like the integration so far of our upperclassmen and younger players. I mean, we got a couple players that are in that in-between, like a Cole Brillhart or a Joe Kessinger, but they've just done a really nice job of integrating, which already puts us ahead of where I thought we might be in terms of just team dynamics. So it's been really nice to see that piece. And we made a joke, our freshmen are in charge of uniform laundry and stuff like that, and they crushed it. They were great at it the other day. You know, it seems such like a small task, but there's some years where that doesn't happen. So things like that things are already getting taken care of is really good.
Now, Ryan, I wanted to ask you too, for Coach, what are the characteristics that you love about Coach throughout your years here?
There you go.
No, Coach has, and he talked about it in his personal interview, but he has this expectation level on how everything needs to be run, and it's not just in the gym, but it's in the classroom. It's making us better younger men, and taking away with us life lessons that we can't forget. And I'm not going to lie, my freshman year, I kind of thought he was a little robotic, and I didn't know how him and I would get along, and I was redshirting. I was like, oh man, I got another 4 years with this guy. But no, it's been great, and we kind of connected my first year of playing, and on the road trips, we've had some really great conversations. I have no problem walking into his office and just having a conversation, whether it's about life, whether it's about volleyball. But he's been one of my biggest role models in my life, and he's taught me so many lessons that I won't be able to forget. So.
For you, what are your favorite aspects about Ryan for all these 4 years?
Well, so recruiting-wise, what you need to understand is, you know, why did we recruit him? Do you know what I mean? And so there were two big things that stood out for me. And so we'd watched him at club, and he'd played middle, outside, opposite. And so I go to a high school match, and he's playing predominantly outside. And it was the way he played the game. Do you know what I mean? So he was confident. He was a little arrogant, just enough to be really good in terms of that. And those were a couple qualities where I was like, that's what we need, that type of guy on the court. We need that guy to step on and continue to carry us a level. And then how he interacted off the court with his teammates in terms of camaraderie, and he wasn't negative or wasn't this negative vibe or any of that stuff. And then going along with that, just had some natural touch and ability that a 6'9" big guy doesn't normally have in terms of that. And so, I mean, that was the piece that we got him here. And then when he got here, you know, his freshman year, he was horrific. He wasn't very good at volleyball. And I was like, oh no, what do we do? Do you know what I mean in terms of that? So he's talking about the robotic. It was at the flip side. And then, as we got forward and you started to see him get comfortable like all freshmen do, and you saw that piece and you saw him continue to elevate. I think the biggest thing that I've enjoyed in the past year is last year he got almost overwhelmed in terms of, he played some summer USA stuff, had a great experience, but it was just so much volleyball and he needed a break. And we talked about it last year, and he had a mental fortitude to work through it all year. And we go on, and you know, he's a second-team All-American, and we win the MIVA championship. And to see him take those growth steps, take a step back to take a step forward in terms of where he needed to be, was a huge maturity thing. Do you know what I mean in terms of that? And I think he sees that now, even going into this year. And I don't know that all players get to experience that while they're in college. Sometimes they get away from it, and then they see it. And so to see him do that and see him have that experience and that fun and that piece with it was really neat in terms of just getting better.
And you know, I've been watching you for 3 years. I've seen that grow from your freshman year to senior year. So you really have grown, even though I was watching from the sidelines, you really have grown in a lot of maturity.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Flyer Nation. I'd like to thank Ryan Coenen and Dan Friend for joining with us today. Best of luck in your upcoming season. I'll be watching it all the way.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Make sure to watch our next episode of Flyer Nation, where we will cover the women's lacrosse team. And I'm your host, Jake Zdanowski. We will see you next time.